Hey guys, Crypto Sunday, and it's a slightly sort of green recovery week from last week's drop, up about 4,500, nearly all Bitcoin. So altcoins are a bit of a mixed bag, which I'll come back to. Not a huge amount of sort of general market news, but the Cardano and Solana Messari reports that I was talking about last week are out. So I thought we'd have a bit of a sort of deep dive into those. Although I did just have to highlight Mr. Gensler, probably a video that he would rather know was sort of hidden away and airbrushed from history. But have a quick listen to this.
So we already know in the U.S. and in many other jurisdictions that 3/4 of the market are not ICOs or not what would be called securities. Even in the U.S., Canada, and Taiwan, the three jurisdictions that follow something similar to the Howey test that we've talked about, 3/4 of the market is non-securities. It's just a commodity, a cash crypto. So you'll hear debates about initial coin offerings and what's a security and what's not a security. Relevant and important debate. But for 3/4 of the market, it's not particularly relevant as a legal matter, as a regulatory matter. Brodish.
So there you go. 3/4 of the market is a cash commodity or similar. And that was 4.5 years ago. And apparently the whole world has changed now since he came into power. This is when he was sort of teaching at MIT. Even though, again, as he said last week, he has admitted that he's never owned a single crypto. So, a bit of a joke. So, getting into the Messari reports, as I mentioned, I've been sort of considering switching some of my Cardano over to Solana, sort of seeing more developer activity there and sort of more going on, basically. And yeah, the reports don't sort of give exactly the same metrics all the way through, but they do give some. So sort of average unique fee payers would sort of take as a similar to active addresses, basically. And that's sort of come down from Q1 last year, 203,000, sort of went up to 325, but has come down to 129,000. Still not too bad. And look over at Cardano's daily active addresses. That was 156,000 in Q1 last year, and has sort of come down 90, 64, up to 68, but then down to 60,000. So yeah, it's sort of just over double the active addresses on Solana, and sort of was higher at the peak. And sort of Cardano peaked in Q1 last year. Then daily transactions is just a little bit crazy. They do split it into voting transactions and non-voting. So voting would be sort of voting on protocols and upgrades and that sort of thing. You want to exclude all of that. Non-vote transactions is sort of people actually using the network, and this is sort of slightly down from last quarter on Solana, and down from the peak, but sort of just under 20 million transactions in the quarter, whereas Cardano sort of peaked again last quarter, Q1 last year, and has sort of come down to 67,000. So I would say that just gives you a bit of an idea of the scale of usage, really. I mean, people do sort of spam Solana quite a lot with sort of NFT transactions and that sort of thing because it's very, very cheap. But Cardano's pretty cheap as well. And yeah, 67,000 transactions compared to 20 million. A little bit stark. And you've got their ecosystem figures. So a lot of people sort of have criticised Solana for their drop in total value locked in sort of various staking and lending protocols and that sort of thing. It was $5 billion in Q1 last year. Obviously, this is in billions. So with the price of the token coming down, that naturally comes down. Even if no one had sort of unstaked or anything, that would have come down a significant amount. But it's come down to sort of, it bottomed in Q4 at 200 million and is up to 300 million. So obviously nowhere near pre-FTX. That sort of caused a huge issue, of course, but yeah, 300 million. And we go over to Cardano. Sort of, this is not something that Cardano ever gets criticism about, and people talk about the total value locked being on the up, but again, down from Q1 2022, partly because of the drop in token price, but up to 138 million from 50. So admittedly, it's up 172%, but it's, again, less than half of Solana. And this is something that Solana gets bashed for quite a bit. So even with the sort of sharp drop, it's got over twice the total value locked. And then quarterly NFT trading volume is sort of basically sort of the biggest difference of them all, down from a peak on Cardano to $75 million, and Solana secondary sales volume was 330 million. So that is where their sort of strength is, or has been for quite a while, the sort of transactions and number of NFT sales, really. And they also have the unique active programs, which has been sort of on the up. Still sort of struggling to get to the bottom of whether this is NFT projects or sort of more, real world apps and programs and that sort of thing. Obviously, it's easy to spin up a sort of fairly generative AI, written art. You can make 10,000 NFTs sort of based on a few, different prompts, and sort of throw up an NFT collection out of nothing, basically. And if that's what they're calling a program, then it's maybe a little bit sort of disingenuous. Cardano doesn't really give a sort of equivalent to this, but I did see on one of these sort of weekly Twitter reports by one of the teams, they reported 123 programs actually running and about 1,250 in development. So I guess you could call active programs as being in development, and that's 1,200 odd compared to 95,000, and the 1,200 odd is rising like 2 per week. So it's not as if it's rocketing up there. And then you've got the amount staked. This is quite high on Cardano, and sort of Solana is at about sort of 70%. It's been dropping down quarter on quarter fairly consistently. People see this as a sort of criticism, but I guess you could say staked tokens really are people sort of not using it, just collecting the inflation reward. Sort of, obviously, if you're not staked, then you're more likely to be either buying or selling, or buying NFTs, or sort of using DeFi. And so I don't really see a very high stake amount as sort of particularly positive. Fine that they've got 70%, but I would see it coming down as, correct me if I'm wrong, but potentially positive. I wouldn't see, if you've got 90% of it locked up, then it's not really getting used, surely. But then Cardano doesn't really sort of give this, but number of validators has been sort of significantly increasing on Solana, up 19% in the last quarter. And this is one that they're normally sort of top of the charts on, the Nakamoto coefficient. So sort of how decentralized the validators are, basically, and sort of how easy it is to take down the network. Basically, you'd have to sort of take down lots and lots of areas and different validators. So that's one that Solana normally does quite well on. I haven't seen Cardano sort of up there in the charts. I think there have been some sort of graphs comparing Nakamoto coefficient, but sort of basically Bitcoin's high, Ethereum's okay, Cardano's sort of quite low down the charts generally, but Solana are right up there with the top. So coming over to the network overview, this has got quite a few similar stats to the overall one, but does sort of give you average transactions per second. So Solana sort of is often touted as having 65,000 potential transactions per second, but that's sort of a test that they run basically in lab conditions, sort of very, very simple transactions and sort of making conditions best for themselves. This is the sort of real world transactions per second. So again, sort of voting is probably not one to really consider. You want non-vote transactions. That would be the sort of real world usage transactions, and that's sort of up and down really, has been sort of in the 400s and it's now at 226, but it's good to know that the vote transactions can go through as well, so that's been going up sort of fairly consistently, and we're sort of looking at 3,000, 3,200 now, where it was at sort of 2,200 overall in Q1 2022, so that's good. And then average transaction fee just keeps coming down and down. That is sort of Solana's thing. Cardano doesn't have sort of quite as many stats. We saw the daily active addresses, not a huge amount of new addresses coming online. The total addresses is quite interesting, 4.4 million compared to sort of 60,000 active. They don't give this stat on Cardano, on Solana, but I would see that as sort of a bit rough, maybe. That's sort of, what is it, just over 1.3% of total addresses are currently active. So quite a lot of people have left or sort of created lots and lots of new addresses for themselves, potentially. But then, yeah, and average transaction fee is sort of 12 cents now, down from sort of down from Q1 last year. It's fairly consistently down, similar to Solana, but obviously it's a lot cheaper than Ethereum and even some of the layer 2s, but still a way off Solana. So it doesn't really have that as a huge thing to sort of shout about, basically. So they give a financial overview, which is not sort of something that I would really think is important covering as a comparison. Sort of market cap is the market cap, fair enough. Inflation is sort of rather similar, 4-5%. But the revenue is sort of reasonably important, with Solana having sort of significantly lower fees. Interesting to see the revenue, even in dollars, has sort of leveled out since last quarter, and yeah, $3.6 million is up quite a bit in SOL terms, 340,000 SOL. So that's an all-time high. Obviously, with the lower SOL price, people are sort of transacting the same amount in dollars, then it's going to be higher amount of SOL. But good to see that hasn't just dropped down. And if we come over to, and they actually give you a price to sales ratio, if you like, sort of similar to a stock. So of the revenue that they currently get in on a quarterly basis, they're trading at 564 times that revenue as a market cap. But I don't really think you can compare this to sort of companies on a price to sales basis. But then coming over to Cardano, quarterly revenue is down quite a bit from 4.3 million to 707,000. So a fifth of what Solana get. And Solana's revenue is sort of a third of what it was before, so hasn't dropped quite as much. I think this is partly, it seems, if you scroll up, due to their introduction of priority fees. So they were sort of having a bit of a trouble with people spamming NFT buys and that sort of thing, because the fees were so low. So they've introduced this sort of similar to Bitcoin, I think you can pay a slightly higher fee and sort of have it go through as priority, and it's the amount of people doing that is increasing, up to 50% now paying with priority. So I guess if this still is sort of fairly cheap, then you may just get the spammers sort of choose to pay priority anyway. And yeah, not sure whether there's sort of ways to mitigate that, but we'll have to see. But so this sort of does mean more revenue for the team and for sort of validators. So that's good. So coming over to the ecosystem and development overview, is sort of, I guess, important to highlight the total value locked in dollars has increased in the last quarter, but that is really just because the token price has recovered. If you actually look, the SOL amount is down 40%, or 10 million SOL. So people are sort of removing their SOL from these platforms, which isn't the best. If you come over to Cardano, their sort of total value locked in ADA terms, so in the token terms, is up 77% in the last quarter and is an all-time high, it seems. Or it doesn't go before Q1 2022, but I can't imagine that's it was higher before then. So yeah, there's increased quite a bit, and Solana's is down 40%. But I do think we could potentially get into a sort of multi-chain type industry going forward, where sort of maybe decentralized finance isn't really Solana's strength. That could be sort of Ethereum and some of the layer 2 strength, and sort of Solana is more for NFTs and sort of smaller transactions with the very cheap fee. So looking at the NFT side, this is sort of Solana's strength, so no surprise that it's going to beat out Cardano, but sort of 3 million new NFTs down from the peak, but up 11.8% from last quarter, so that's pretty good. And sort of sales volume, $330 million and 17 million SOL, so up in SOL terms and dollar terms. And if we come over to Cardano, quarterly NFT trading volume in dollars, $79 million. They don't give it in ADA, but it's obviously a hell of a lot lower, 79 million compared to 330 million. No surprise there. And the sort of buyers and sellers is quite stark as well. 889,000 buyers, 887,000 sellers. So ever so slightly more buyers than sellers. This is sort of down quite a bit from last year. People are sort of saying the NFT side is dead. I think that's because of sort of more Ethereum metrics. I don't think people really focus on Solana quite as much, but yeah, I still think that's reasonably good. Nearly 900,000 buyers and sellers compared to, again, Cardano's NFT space is sort of fairly young, but 2,000 buyers compared to 889,000 and 123 sellers compared to 897,000. So lots of people are buying these new collections and sort of either holding on or sort of no one really cares. But yeah, 123 sellers on a chain that is 50% higher market cap than Solana. So you could say, maybe Cardano is never going to be sort of strong for NFTs. And maybe that's fine, but I would like to see something a bit more than those numbers. Then some other things that sort of can't really be directly compared, but just sort of things going on with the chains. So Render Network cited, sort of covered this last week, the NFT compression as a reason to sort of consider migrating to Solana. Helium sort of said the same thing with their mobile phone hotspots, and you've had sort of lots of other people complimenting the NFT compression feature, so that was pretty good. The gaming side, You've got quite a few sort of games doing reasonably okay, and some sort of that are maybe too big for themselves, like Star Atlas seems sort of one of those projects that's going to be years and years away forever, basically. But be interesting to see if that comes good. They sort of often putting these sort of funds together, 150 million to sort of add to these projects through sort of, as a venture capital, basically, within the Solana ecosystem. And then you've got sort of various other programs launching. You've got a sort of buy now, pay later on NFTs with Halliday, and various sort of other projects. Hive Mapper, which is sort of a Google Maps, Google Street View type thing, who say they have moved to Solana and are sort of doing reasonably well, sort of outpacing how quickly Google collected their sort of data in the early stages. Still sort of a massive undertaking, and they're only sort of 1% of the way through, but potentially a sort of decentralized Google Maps on Solana. So that was pretty good. Active programs hasn't really dropped since the Solana, the FTX crash, rather. So that's good. People haven't sort of abandoned the chain. And just a bit more sort of adoption, really. You've got Coinbase's Layer 2 bridging, includes bridge support for Solana now. Coinbase Wallet adding Solana support. Various other sort of development bits and pieces going on. The Solana mobile app store, so could potentially get Solana-based decentralized apps on, you hate to sort of say, but potentially Android and iOS one day. I think that's probably going to be a struggle, but certainly on their phone, the Saga phone, seems to be sort of selling a few, not selling sort of as many as we would hope, but yeah, not doing too bad. And Brave as well, Solana DApp support made available on Brave for iOS and Android during Q1. So quite a bit of adoption and sort of, projects saying that they're moving to Solana because of X, Y, and Z. Various sort of things in the report you can read. I would suggest having a read of both of these if you're interested in both tokens, but you don't really see sort of the similar, projects moving to Cardano because of X, Y, and Z. Is just better on Cardano. It sort of seems like everything on Cardano is either sort of built from scratch or, just basically built by the team. It's either sort of built for Cardano first or it's built by the team, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but doesn't give you that sort of, people itching to come to your chain because it's just better, which I do like. So basically, sort of going through the rest of the Cardano report, it is really sort of smaller projects, side chains, and sort of bits and pieces that they're working on, but nothing sort of that really piqued my interest. Not a lot of sort of big names from the sort of traditional space, the Web 2 space as people call it, and nothing in the sort of big Web 3 side. Things like Brave Network, big names in the crypto space, sort of onboarding with them. So yeah, just a little bit disappointing, really. Cardano's big thing at the moment seems to be writing and releasing a new programming language. So yeah, I'm not 100% convinced by this. You sort of, if you haven't got the projects building on your network, trying to get them to come over with a new programming language just sort of seems a little too late to me. They're saying it's sort of easy, takes the best of lots of different languages, but yeah, it's 2023, and I think people are sort of fairly happy with Ethereum and certainly Solana's programming language is used across sort of multiple different projects, multiple different cryptos, and yeah, Cardano's now going to have this one new one. So if you use it, maybe it will be sort of easy to port your programs into this language. But yeah, I'm not convinced this is the way to go, to be honest. Seen very little, as I say, in the way of sort of big names coming to Cardano, where, again, this is just in the last week, MasterCard partnering with Polygon, Aptos, Avalanche, and Solana. So got Polygon in there, sort of Aptos as one of the new ones, but Solana sort of in there working with big names. You've also got Solana Labs making a ChatGPT plugin, so you can sort of analyze data on the blockchain. They're saying you could potentially buy NFTs, transfer tokens, and sort of check wallet balance. Could be, I guess the critics will just say this is jumping on the bandwagon and sort of anyone can do this, but it's not really that important. But I see this as, a team providing something that I would imagine people are asking for with all the AI buzz. And lastly, again, I don't really sort of talk about price of sort of smaller altcoins all too much, and I don't get excited just by a price increase, but Render is up 50% after joining Solana. So the only reason I would sort of highlight this is that other projects may sort of, unless this, suddenly drops down and it was just a pump, they may see this as a positive to sort of moving to Solana. The sort of switch has gone reasonably well and the token's up. And so, yeah, if this sort of encourages more projects to potentially switch from wherever or just sort of develop from the ground up on Solana, then I see that as a positive. So yeah, that's the sort of... So yeah, that's my rundown, really. I'm sort of, I would say I'm basically on standby for kind of wait. I sort of haven't made the move just yet. Solana sort of had a reasonably good week. Cardano's been trailing behind. So I would say I'm sort of on standby, maybe hoping for a bit of a Cardano pump, and then I may sort of switch that into Solana. Aside from those two, Bitcoin has basically taken all of the gain this week, up 4.8%. Ethereum sort of basically flat. Solana up 5.8%. As I say, it's had a good week. Cardano, Link, and XRP are all flat. Same with Audius. Matic down 3.6%. Gala down 7.6%. So not doing too well. Quant and Power Ledger sort of fairly flat. Basic Tension token down slightly. ICP, Internet Computer, up 13%. So not seen any news on that. I'll have to have a bit of a dig. And VeChain flat. So yeah, I thought this week I would just have a little bit more of a deep dive into my potential switch. So I said it might have been made last week, still hasn't been made yet, but yeah, as I say, I'm on standby. So let me know your thoughts on these two projects, and let me know your thoughts on any part of the portfolio and how your portfolio is doing in this potential bull market. And like and subscribe. See you soon.